All right. Last week we worked on finding least common multiples. Tell somebody next to you, what is the least common multiple? What is the least common multiple? Okay, back to me. Tell me, what is the least common multiple? Okay. So you're counting by that number, right? So if my number is 6 and I want to find multiples of 6, I would take 6 times 1, which is 6 times 2, which is 6 times 3, and I would list those multiples. Okay? Just like when we added fractions on Friday that did not have common denominators, we had to use LCMs to find common denominators, right? We had to find a least common multiple to find the common denominator before we could add. Today we're going to move on to subtracting. Guess what? What am I going to tell you? You have to find the least common multiple or a common multiple again before you can subtract. So even those of you that I didn't get to meet with yet on adding fractions with unlike denominators, you'll pick up again and be able to see some of those things still when we subtract today. So that'll be a little bit of a review for you too. So the first one I just want you to watch as I talk you through it. So if I have 5 over 6, and I'm going to subtract 1/2. Notice I still choose to write my fractions vertically, up and down, because when I go to find that least common multiple and I write my equivalent fractions, it's going to be easier to compare those numbers. Okay? So just like when we added fractions, I have to find my least common multiple of my two denominators. My denominator in the top fraction is 6. My denominator in the bottom fraction is 2. So I'm going to come down here below. I'm going to write my 6 and my 2, and I'm going to write my multiples. 6, 12, 18. Most of you probably realized right away that 2 has a multiple of 6, right? So you probably knew you could come down here and start counting by 2's first and realize that you will have a common multiple of 6. 6 happens to be my least common multiple, but remember, if we continued these, we would also find other multiples that they have in common. You can use any multiples that they have in common, but I say the least common multiple or the lowest multiple that there is because it'll make your math easier in the end. It'll keep your numbers smaller and you'll have to reduce less. Okay? So, we found out that my least common multiple is 6. I'm going to create equivalent fractions that now have a denominator of 6. Okay? So, Caleb B., walk me through this. If I have a 2 here, how do I get to the 6? 2 times what gives me 6? 3. If I multiply the bottom times 3, what do I have to do to the numerator of that fraction? Multiply it by 3. What is 1 times 3? Leslie, how did I get from 6 to 6? I multiplied it by 1. If I multiply the bottom by 1, what do I do to the top? 5 times 1 is? All right. Here's something very important that you always want to make sure that you're looking at when you subtract fractions. Tell me what you remember about when you subtract whole numbers. What always has to be when you subtract whole numbers, Chelsea?
The highest number has to be on the top.
My largest number has to be on the top, right? Same thing. Chloe, you gonna make it? When I subtract fractions, my numerator on the top, this is very important if you listen to anything that I'm telling you today, listen to this. My numerator on the top must be larger than my numerator on the bottom. Later in the week, I'm going to take those words back, and I'm going to teach you how to borrow with mixed numbers. But for today, your numerator on the top has to be larger than what, Allie? Perfect. Good job. Okay? Now, just like when we added fractions, we can go about our day. Okay? I subtract my numerator, so 5 minus 3 is? And what's my denominator, Marcus? 6, because my denominator always stays the same, right? Okay, what's wrong with this fraction? It can be simplified by what, Taylor? 2 over 6 can be simplified by? 2 over 6. What number divides into both 2 and 6? 2. Okay. I can simplify this since they're both even. I can divide by 2. Whatever I do to the top, I have to do to the bottom, right? 2 divided by 2 is? 6 divided by 2 is? Last time I checked, it was 3. Okay. So, 5/6 minus 1/2 is 1/3. Okay? Here's one for you to work along with me. I have 4/7, so your board should be out. Your marker should be moving along with mine. Minus 1/3. Notice I'm still writing it vertically. Vertical means up and down. Okay? Raise your hand if you can tell me the first step. When I look at these fractions, what's my first step, Alexa? Perfect. What numbers am I going to use, Hayden? What numbers am I finding the least common multiple of? 7 and 3. Okay. All right. Caleb H., tell me the multiples of 7. Okay. Elliot, tell me the multiples of 3. Okay. Elliot knew I could stop there because I finally have a multiple that is the same. Whoops, off the board here. So my common multiple, or my LCM, would be 21. What am I going to do with that 21, Landon? I'm going to create equivalent fractions with 21 being my, is it going to be my numerator or my denominator? So it's going to be on the top or the bottom? It's going to be on the bottom. So it's going to be my denominator. So I'm going to create an equivalent fraction with 21 as a denominator. Okay? Chelsea, how did I get from 3 to 21?
Times 7.
If I multiply the bottom times 7, what do I do to the top?
Times 7.
1 times 7? Lene, how did I get from 7 to 21?
3.
What do I do to the top? Perfect. Okay, I'm going to erase this little work down here. What's my next step? Chloe, can you tell me my next step? What's the question that I should always ask myself in my mind when I get to this point and I'm subtracting? Question I should always ask myself when I get to this step and I'm subtracting is? Not yet. What do you think, Landon? I have to first make sure what, though? Before I even subtract, I always want to make sure the top number is bigger. Is 12 larger than 7? Yes. So now I can subtract. 12 minus 7 is? What's my denominator, Caleb B? 21. Okay. Can I simplify this fraction? No, because my only factors of 5 are 1 and 5, and my only factors of 21, 5 is not one of them. So my final answer would be 5 over 21. Ready to do your homework?
Yeah. Can we do one that has like the grade, but the top number is like
No, not today. Not until we get into mixed numbers, because we have to have that whole number over here that we can borrow from. We're getting there at the end of the week. So we're getting there. But one step at a time, Chelsea, one step at a time. Okay? You're going to do, this is your ticket to your homework, 5/6 minus 3/4.